There's also the ego that starts to play into this as a small business owner, right? Where you're that accidental entrepreneur, right? You found the right fit. And all of a sudden, the people around you start looking at you potentially as this hero, right? That you know more than they do. And to have to go to market and say, hey, I don't really know something about business, even though everybody around me thinks I'm the smartest guy potentially in the room, is the acknowledgement that your ego has to be pretty solid to be able to really raise your hand and say that. But to me, those are the most successful entrepreneurs, those ones that can raise their hand and say, look, I don't understand finance and accounting. I probably need to learn it, but I'd rather bring somebody in that can help me or teach me or staff me, or especially now with the gig economy that exists, right? There's fractionalized CFOs and fractionalized accounting departments that specialize in this with a huge track record that it's just plug and play, right? It's like, man, I don't have to staff. I don't have to worry about W-2s. I don't have to worry about payroll taxes. I don't have to worry about benefits. I can just plug you in and go, and you have all the right credentials behind your name. I'll take that many, many times over.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo, using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Hey, we're doing something new. I'm going to have a live Q&A meeting on Zoom on March 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can join us live and ask your questions. I'll be happy to answer them. If you can't make it that day, email your questions ahead of time and we'll put them in there and we'll answer them for all of you. So hopefully you can join us that day. I'm going to put a link in the show notes with Eventbrite code so that you can sign up and get notified and have the details for the call. So we hope to see you there on March 22nd. Business is pretty simple. Doing simple is hard. And today we're going to chat about that and how to ensure your business grows and is more profitable. We have a fellow business owner and investor to share how he grows his business and what he sees with other business owners. I know there are many actionable ideas that will come out of this episode for you. You might want to go back and listen a second time. Ryan Niddel is CEO, board member, and entrepreneur. He is also the leading authority on improving revenue of companies by improving their EBITDA through increased operational efficiency, lean manufacturing principles, and more. He's helped with the acquisition or exit of more than 11 companies while seeing their collective revenue surpass more than $237 million. He successfully tripled the revenue of more than 5 companies in under 2.5 years, adding an extra $950 million in valuations. Let's meet Ryan. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Ryan Niddel. It's great to have you join us today.
It's great to be a guest. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
As have I. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your businesses?
I can. So to start with, of all things, a mechanical engineer by field of study, and knew during mechanical engineering that I didn't love sitting behind a computer, right? AutoCAD and all the pieces and parts, but it did teach me a thought process of really starting with the end in mind. And laughingly, the term reverse engineering is real in that space. You start with an end in mind and you calibrate from there. That eventually took some twists and turns and led me to a startup web hosting company where I came on as an affiliate manager, a fancy term for salesperson, and came on board, had 10,000 clients. 2.5 years later, we had 580,000 clients. I'd taken over as president and CEO. I'd bought out 2 of our partners. I went through 2 capital raises and then an exit. And the number of lessons I learned about what you're supposed to do in accounting and what you're supposed to do in operations and what you're supposed to do in sales to maximize the value of your company is worth its weight in gold. It just wasn't worth its weight in capital as I exited. Some really painful lessons. Would be happy to dive into those. From that point, thought I had the Midas touch, right? Thought that my hand had to be gold. I was the ripe old age of 29 and I know everything now. Call me Warren Buffett. Call me Charlie Munger. Started a high-risk merchant processing company. It took me 18 months to go belly up, right? I ended up having to write a multiple 6-figure check to shut down that business. It was December 21st. Let go of all my staff. My car was repossessed. 2 rental properties were in foreclosure. Think my net worth was negative 40 or negative 60 grand, right? So went from a really, really good lifestyle and running this company in the web hosting space to hitting rock bottom. Shortly after that, said, I'm done with the internet. Tired of trying to figure that out. I'm going to get into what I laughingly refer to as hand-to-hand combat. I want to create a sales organization and started a custom clothing company, right? So learned haberdashery, learned all about wool, learned about manufacturing, ended up buying into a manufacturing facility in Huddersfield, England, helped co-design an app to shorten down the supply chain, right? The cash conversion cycle, as we might call it, and really had a great time with that. Was on the road far too much. So my quality of life wasn't good. I didn't create systems to pull myself out of the business, making good money and had great salespeople supporting me, but it wasn't a lifestyle that I wanted to adhere to. So I sold that to my head of sales. Still have a couple thousand custom clothiers across the world using my app. So it's still, a nice licensing fee associated with that. That took me to jumping into the CBD space in 2016, kind of before people knew what CBD was. I remember telling my family I was doing it. You're going to go to prison. You're selling marijuana. They thought it was the end of the world for me. But ended up growing that company from 16 to selling it to a private equity group out of Pittsburgh, December of 2018. Then stepped into a little bit of a consulting world. Didn't really know what was next. Had some capital behind me. Could take a breather. Ended up consulting for a company that I'm now the CEO of, a company called Mid 45, where the owners were, I'll say they hit a metaphorical glass ceiling. They had been in business for 8 years. They'd struggled to get to that $4 to $5 million a year range. Good lifestyle business for them, about a 20% net income. They were happy, but they were burnt out, right? They couldn't get past that. And through some pig-headed discipline and determination, as Chet Holmes would say, so a lot of luck that's kind of trickles in there. Last year, we ended up doing just under 70 million at a 40% net income. So been really exciting as we're positioning ourselves to be one of the first publicly traded kratom companies in the country. And it's been really my full-time focus. Now, somewhere in there, I haphazardly lucked into raising some capital and started a private equity fund that I have, I don't know, $150 or so million assets under management. That's just dry powder for right now, right? I believe that at some point, the fractionalization of attention ends up being the demise of most entrepreneurs, and I'm guilty of that at times. So it's sitting there, it's ready, but it'll be ready after this season of my life.
There's a couple things that I have started to notice out there. Whenever I find a business owner who's an engineer, they understand systems and processes, and they have a slightly different way of doing things, and they're much more methodical about getting things done. And I've noticed that about them. And then they build the systems, which is what business really should be, is a system, and then people run the system. Too often we don't have systems in place. I've also noticed that when you have easy and early success, You think you have the mighty, and that's Mike's story, right? Mike Michalowicz sold his business, said, "Hey, I'm, the smart guy," and literally 2 years later, bankruptcy, keys, car, all that stuff. And so it happens. Sometimes we get lucky, but we're not necessarily as smart as we think we are.
I'm reminded of that almost every day. I think, right, at some point, I've started to evaluate maybe what I'll say, quote unquote, has made me successful. And that's operating the opposite way of what I did during that startup time. It's asking questions from the state of childlike curiosity consistently. It's, why are we doing it this way? Who decided it? Is there a better way to do it? And it's almost a never-ending feedback loop. While we have systems that we've created inside of my business, it's what's to say those are most efficient systems? What's to say that's most effective? And if I'm able to sit back over and over again and assimilate new information to create new data points, then make new trajectories off of, it's led me to a much different place in my business career, where it's just laughingly being the dumbest guy in the room and physically like really focusing on that, like, explain to me what's going on in this very humble way.
It's funny. When I coach my business owners, I'm like, you should pay people to tell you how to be more profitable and how to improve your processes. More often than not, business owners won't listen to their people, won't reward them, or won't give them an incentive for doing that. Let's face it, most people have the way it used to be explained to me back in the day was they have the bowling mentality. I want to be done 5. I need to go home and go bowling. I don't want to think about this. And if you're not going to reward them to do something different, then that's going to be their mentality. We talk about you've got to teach your people how to make you profitable and then help them to be profitable too.
Absolutely.
So have you done something like that, or is it just you constantly asking the questions?
So that's been the most recent season. If I look at some of the successes from 2022, it's really come down to a conversation of removing myself from any level of necessity from any part of the business. And then not only doing that for myself, but focusing on helping the C-suite that supports it do much of the same. Now, certainly there's certain things that, right, I look at the Jeff Bezos type 1, type 2 decision type conversation, right? That there's some decisions that could be catastrophic to the business that a CEO has to make, right? As we look to acquire competitors and things like that, and I'm looking at capital allocation, well, I get input from other people. It ends up being a decision that I'm not quite prepared to outsource completely yet. But the majority of the decisions inside the business are type 2 decisions, where that door swings both ways, where if I empower people to follow a system and a process, and there's guardrails to help them make an efficient decision, those decisions can now be cascaded down to the organization where there's less decision fatigue. Right? I don't know about you, but as a man, I think my best decisions are all done by 9 a.m. and it's just a downhill slide after that. My wife would probably agree with that. So it's this thing of, how can I make certain that the decisions and things that I'm involved in are the highest leverage versus out of the necessity of wanting to control everything?
So how do you create a culture that allows people to make decisions? And then what are you doing specifically in the way of guardrails?
Really, really good question. So the culture, right, I'd like to say it's easy. It's probably better to say it's simple. It's not so easy. Where I think it's natural in my experience that as a CEO, people want to shield you from the bad information because there's always that thing of the title, right? At any moment, I can walk in and I suppose fire any person I want to. It's just very opposite from how I am, where I'm in my manufacturing facility as I'm speaking to you right now, and I'll hang up and I'll go down the production line and I'll screw lids on the bottles and I'm laughing around with the team, and it's try to normalize the playing field. But as I do that, to help, I'll say, push those decisions out and down through the organization, it started with the really basic parts of explaining the type 1, type 2 decisions, and then creating a process for an authority metrics and assigning metrics that exist inside the organization. And at what level of the organization do you have autonomy to make what decision, right? It's almost that Ritz-Carlton model where, right, anybody at Ritz-Carlton has an authority to sign off on a $2,000 expense to help someone have a better experience, and really helping our budget and our forecast support that level of decision-making, knowing that, to me, if I look at my life, I've grown from making decisions that probably weren't the most efficient and effective, but I needed to learn that way. And so the guardrails are the authority metrics, the signing metrics, the budget, the forecast, and consistently sharing those on a weekly basis on how we're trending. What type of decisions have you made using something like a software platform called Lattice, where we're doing status updates on objectives and key results, right? We're running an OKR system inside of my business where we're unified on the objectives for the company for the year. We're pulling them back into the quarter. And then we have key results in between 3 and 5 for each employee that they're consistently able to help, navigate through their own lens. And so they know where we're going as an organization, and they're able to help impact that from their own vantage point.
That sounds a lot like Traction.
It is. I would say, so we ran the EOS model from about 10 million a year to 50 million. And I found once we got above 100 full-time employees, and we now have 5 rooftops, some of the Traction model is beautiful, but it was creating a siloed environment where some of the rocks in the Traction model weren't actually tying people to the right behaviors, where they were focused on their bonuses. I attached some of their bonus compensation to the completion of their rocks. And they were more focused at times on making sure they hit their objectives because they wanted paid than what was best for the company. And the OKR model kind of helps navigate that a little bit more.
And that's one of the things that I talk to business owners about. Be careful what you incentivize because you will get it. So if you incentivize for the wrong thing, or if there are unexpected consequences of what you've incentivized, then you're going to end up in trouble. And one of those is simply if you're just incentivizing for sales and you give them the ability to discount, they'll give away your profit margin before you can blink an eye without even thinking twice. So you have to make sure that the right incentives are in place to make sure that happens.
Absolutely. Right. As we go through our quarterly offsites, right, the planning cycles, as we call them, half the time is spent on creating that forward path and the projections. And the other half of the time is figuring out the downside. What's the blind side we need to cover for as we create those OKRs or rocks where, right, it's great to say, right, I manufacture physical goods. So there's a number of bottles we have to manufacture every day. Well, the contrarian side of that is we need to keep the shrinkage or the loss or the quality above a certain point. And so it's that navigating both sides of any equation where it really becomes exciting as a business owner to see not only, again, that revenue increase, but also the EBITDA, right? It's very, you or I could spend as much money as we want in marketing, and you and I could grow the top line on any business under the planet and outspend our competition, just drive ourselves deeper into the hole. And it's that adherence to how do we maintain healthy margins in the decisions that we're making.
So let's talk a little bit about the accounting and the margins and everything else. What have you seen with business owners or your own experience with, let's say, the bad behaviors on the accounting and finance side?
Yeah, and I'm gonna pour some water over my head right now because it's gonna start with me. It's a real story. So I came into this business as a consultant, right? The 2 founders of the business were uncertain if they wanted to continue. They hit a glass ceiling of, I said, around $5 million a year in revenue. Our first conversations were, can you help me get out of this? I don't want to do it anymore. I think I can, right? I've sold a couple companies. I'm familiar with that process. I've helped some other people exit. Let's just poke around and see what's going on. And we start looking at things and I say, okay, what's your accounts receivable ledger right now? How's that look? And they said, my what? I said, your accounts receivable. So the 2 founders, right? One guy is great at sales and one guy is great at marketing. And so I have no idea. So I go talk to the controller at that point. You mind sharing with me your accounts receivable? They didn't have it. It took them 6 weeks to calculate the receivables. It was about $1.9 million in receivables. And it's not only an accounting process, it was also an operational process where you'll love this. The sales team used to be able to take an order, confirm it over the phone, and send it right to fulfillment. When fulfillment would ship the product out the door, if they got around to it, they would let accounting know they sent it out. And so it created this ineffective feedback loop that, sure, there was, I call it, bank account accounting. The owners would log in and say, well, there's more money in here than yesterday, so we're doing good. And while that's truthful, and they're some of my best friends or my partners now, that's how they had ran this business. And so really start poking around and started realizing, I sit down, I'm talking to who was then again the controller. And I say, what sort of process are we running for inventory management? Are we LIFO? Are we FIFO? How's this work? And she said, well, we're a combination of both. I said, help me understand that, right? I'm not that smart. help me understand how can you run a hybrid of last in, first out and first in, first out? And she couldn't explain it. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. Now we're at the top of the roller coaster, right? I'm about to lose my lunch as we're going down the quick side of it. And start saying, okay, are we on a cash basis or accrual? Well, we're kind of doing both. Okay, well, I'm not that intelligent. Help me understand how that happens. And she couldn't do it. So to make a long story short, from late 2018 when I came in till the December of 2019, it was literally all reworking the processes, finding a more capable controller to come in, rebuilding the books for the past 2 years to switch from cash to accrual basis, cleaning up our processes for inventory management and reconciliation, making sure the balance sheet is trued up, right, by doing inventory counts, hard counts at the first of every month. And then slowly through that, right, we switched to cycle counting and some things that make the business a little more efficient. But it's literally been a pseudo, MBA in finance for me that I wasn't prepared. Like, I didn't know I even needed it until I'm in it. And it's just full-fledged. That's why I spent the majority of 2019 and first part of 2020 focusing on was just enhancing my acumen as far as finance and accounting goes.
These are just standard procedures. This is what you do. Going back to Profit First, the whole book was based on the premise that most business owners, especially these guys are in the $5 million range, just look at their bank account. Life is good. Life is bad. I need to do something. I can go on and live life. And yet it creates absolute craziness. And it's funny because I even see this with the solopreneurs. So we recently sold one of our rentals. Well, actually, it was 6 months ago. I still haven't paid the cleaning bill because they never sent it to me. Now, I called multiple times and said, send me a bill. I need to, because I want to close out the books and close out that whole process. Still can't get a bill. I don't understand how people stay in business if they don't bill, they don't have systems, they don't watch their collections and make sure that all of that stuff is appropriate. Because if you're lending money out like that, you become a bank. And unless you've got big fat reserves and you're collecting interest, you're in the wrong business.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And that's been one of the fascinating things of making those structural changes or operational changes. There was a mutiny that ended up happening in early 2020 because you have this group of individuals, right? We laughingly say we're an organization where misfits fit. And as you look at that, I'm creating structures and processes that to me are very normal for businesses, right? These aren't, I'm not reinventing the wheel. It's just, GAAP accounting principles, kind of 101 stuff. We're not getting into sophisticated financial modeling yet. And, half the staff is threatening to leave. I'm saying, guys, hold on a second. Let me explain why this is a benefit versus a detriment. But to make it even worse, Rocky, we were paying commission on uncollected revenue as well. So the entire system was just flawed. And again, I love my partners, brilliant businessmen, until the point that they're not. And I think to me, that's one of those things that connects with me as I speak to different business owners. But I look at business as a pretty simple thing. It's marketing, operations, sales, and service or accounting. And you look at it, and I think we have a natural propensity to one or two of those as entrepreneurs. There's those that we lean into. And it's natural to me when you step into business that you're going to bring a friend into it. You're going to bring somebody in. But that friend probably thinks like you do. He or she is just a few degrees different than you are. And saying, look, if you really start a business and you want to bring a partner in, it should probably be someone to cover your blind side, right? If you're great at sales and marketing, you probably need your right hand to be really good at operations and finance, or just understand the fact that, outsource it or pay somebody from the onset to really help bolster up those blind sides.
So I'm guessing you were able to purchase this company for very little in comparison to its real value.
Well, hindsight's always 2020. And Rocky, that was a point before I had my private equity fund capitalized. And I'm looking at this business, and it back then was probably worth $3 to $5 million, right? Maybe give or take. And I worked out a different deal, right? Where I ended up coming in as an equity partner based off growth, and eventually went from COO, fractional COO to CEO. And so I wish I would have bought the company, right? Because we just went through a valuation, and it's north of 200 million is our current enterprise value. And saying, gosh, if I only knew back then, but right, how many times could you or I say that? Or as you're listening to us, like everything is could I have done it back then? And it just makes me more aware now when opportunities show up that I have the confidence back in myself, right? There was something that happened with me when I misstepped during that time, right? Started the merchant processing company. It didn't work. That really destroyed my confidence in my business ability, right? I was playing defense instead of playing offense until probably 2 or 3 years ago. And so while inside of me, it's business to me hasn't inherently changed. I mean, certainly there's aspects that have, but do you have a product that people want? Do you charge something that they find value in, and can you account for it? At the end of the day is kind of how I look at business. There's just that season where I didn't believe in myself. And so I wish I would have bought the company. I could have found $3 million from somebody somewhere. But nonetheless, I've got 2 good friends out of it. We're almost equal partners. We're going to have a great time between either, a PE exit at the end of this year or an IPO. It's something I couldn't have imagined experiencing and playing such a role in.
When I look at companies, and that's kind of what Rocket Fuel is all about. There's the visionary, the sales guy, there's the operations person, and yet there's that third person, which is the finance. And people think that accountants are good at helping in that part. And as you taught, this guy had a controller, and the controller wasn't even doing any of the basic finance things that should be done. And I think part of that may come back to the company culture didn't allow it. And so
Yes.
that creates a whole nother issue. When you're talking to other business owners, what % of them do you think have a good handle on their financials and what's going on?
So much of that to me, in my experience, has been determined upon the age of their business and the revenue of their business. It seems to me, right, if it's a solopreneur, if it's an early entrepreneur, I like to call them accidental entrepreneurs, right? They come up with a good idea, right place, right time, pig-headed discipline and determination, and poof, we've got a business, right? I think $1 million can be achieved from either market message match or product market fit, a lot of hard work. I think the 5 million, you have to start having systems and processes. You have to start pulling yourself out of it. You're going to get a little reduction in net income. And what I find is once you get north of that 10 million, it seems like there's, in the people I have the pleasure of speaking with, it seems like they have a better grasp on their finances. But even then, there's a whole nother tranche. You start getting up into that 30, 40, 50. And I find even the $20 million, $10 million operators, if I say, talk to me about the difference between finance and accounting, like, well, they're the same thing. So, well, hold on a second. What do you mean? Well, it's all one and the same. And I've taken a different approach, right? And I don't know that my way is the right way, but I've just mentally calibrated that accounting is looking back at transactions that have already happened and making sure they're accounted for. And finance is the ability to look forward and navigate the landscape that's coming up, right? Do you have, the weighted cost of capital, is that, angled in your favor? Do you have a strategic acquisition plan? Are you in the most tax efficient models possible? Some things that, in my experience, I haven't seen a lot of accountants that really, really specialize in that. They can be great at, creating the big 3 financial statements, but to start to navigate those waters is now almost another person or another skill set. And, north of that 20, 25 million, it seems like people start to step into that arena and are comfortable with that because, right, you start out as an LLC, you start looking and saying, holy cow, 47% of my income is disappearing to taxes. There's got to be a better way to do this. You start exploring some new possibilities, which to me starts to lead you more to the finance side in addition to accounting.
And I think what I find is the smaller business owners are more focused on not paying taxes versus actually looking at their finances and saying, how do I actually keep more money? And the side effect of keeping more money is paying a little bit more in taxes, but they get the order wrong. And so they make decisions that lower taxes and then screw up their cash flow and their future ability and everything else.
It's just the same thing that happened in this business. It's, my partners, before they were my partners, like fall of 2018, they're sitting down and saying, look, there's this 179 deduction. We can write off we can accelerate depreciation on a heavy piece of equipment. We're going to go buy 3,500 series pickup trucks for both the owners. Well, that's beautiful, right? That's going to lower your cash position. Great. You have this asset you get to write off and you accelerate the depreciation, but there's no real return on that investment capital, right? You're not using it to grow enterprise value. It's actually a pretty inefficient utilization of capital. And we went round and round. I hadn't probably earned their trust yet to that part. And right, they're small business owners at that point. Like, of course you want the new truck. You've been working really hard for a long time. But now it's different, right? They're starting to, I don't say finally, because that would feel condescending, but they're finally starting to understand, like, hold on. As a C Corp, we might as well leave money in the bank. We might as well figure out, right? We've created our own insurance company, right? So we have our own captive insurance that, because we're in a little bit of a gray space market, insurance is challenging for us. So we do it the right way. We claim taxes on it, right? We're out buying competitors, buying market share, and they're seeing this enterprise value keep, taking these big tranches up, and we're buying competitors for, 2 or 3x EBITDA. And our company's valued at 10 to 14x. They're starting to see now, holy cow, with some leverage and some financial modeling, we're starting to create some real wealth here, which is a really exciting thing to get to experience it and for them to start to experience instead of, buying a new toy.
And I get that. And I think a lot of, I don't know what a 3500 F series is. Was that about $100,000?
I think by the time I can't blame just them. By the time we got done dressing it up, it's about $100,000.
So let's just say you have a 10% profit margin in your business, which for many businesses is average. You go buy $100,000 truck, you need to sell $1 million to pay for that truck. And when you start thinking about things in those terms, you realize how difficult it is to pay for that truck and whether or not you really want to buy it or not. And the reality is the accountant goes, yeah, go buy the truck so that you pay less taxes and I'm the hero. Again, we talked about the right incentives for the right places. And that goes to your finance people as well. And they have to understand the bigger picture of what's going on. And I think that's I don't know why it's so missing out in that space and why there isn't more help for business owners in that space. I just assumed that there was more. And as I look back in history, accountants used to do more of this, but the new accountants aren't taught this. And so I would probably say in the last 20 years, that skill set has disappeared.
Completely agree. And I find it from my counterparts that I get to speak to, there's also the ego that starts to play into this as a small business owner, right? Where you're that accidental entrepreneur, right? You found the right fit. And all of a sudden the people around you start looking at you potentially as this hero, right? That you know more than they do. And to have to go to market and say, hey, I don't really know something about business, even though everybody around me thinks I'm the smartest guy potentially in the room, is the acknowledgement that your ego has to be pretty solid to be able to really raise your hand and say that. But to me, those are the most successful entrepreneurs, those ones that can raise their hand and say, look, I don't understand finance and accounting. I probably need to learn it, but I'd rather bring somebody in that can help me or teach me or staff me, or especially now with the gig economy that exists, right? There's fractionalized CFOs and fractionalized accounting departments that specialize in this with a huge track record that it's just plug and play, right? It's like, man, I don't have to staff. I don't have to worry about W-2s. I don't have to worry about payroll taxes. I don't have to worry about benefits. I can just plug you in and go, and you have all the right credentials behind your name. I'll take that many, many times over.
It works well. I don't know why more don't do it. And I think part of it is, and because I talk to people, and people are like, when they look at me, sometimes they look at me as a cost. I'm like, I don't think you understand. I am not a cost center. I'm a revenue and profit center. If we're not giving you multiples of what it is, then we're doing something wrong. And I think people need to start looking at their finances and managing their finances as a true revenue center. Because as you talked about, if you know AR is that high, cleaning that up alone, a couple million extra bucks of cash in the business. Oh, wow, that's incredible. And then making sure everybody actually gets a bill. Wow, that would be incredible. And they pay you on time, or they pay you in advance. Then you don't even, now everyone else becomes your bank. Now we really turn the things around, and you can do these things. I tell people it takes time, and it sounds like it's taking you time. I tell people, it might take 2-3 years to get this all fixed. It's not overnight success. And I don't know that anyone wants to hear that.
No, I don't think people want to hear it. And I think that so much of this also plays into an understanding of what the goal is for the business that you've created, right? Or do you want to pass it off to your children? Is it a cash grab for a short period of time? Are you trying to create enterprise value? Because my position in the marketplace is really coming in and helping businesses clean themselves up and be ready for an exit. And everything that a qualified finance and accounting team does is a prerequisite of maximizing your multiple, right? If you don't have your systems and processes documented, if you don't have financial controls put in place, if you don't have signing metrics, if you don't have, to me, even, I have all the companies I own, we go through PCAOB audits every year. I need third-party audit firms to come in and hold us to accountability standards of a publicly traded company, because that's our aspiration. So we might as well act as if that's required right now. And it's like, you got to know where you want to get to in order to build the system to support that desired outcome. And so many people have gotten a hold of me of, I want to sell my business 6 months from now. And start looking, it's like, gosh, I can't even get you through a due diligence cycle more than likely in 6 months. If you have your packaging ready and you're looking for a cash infusion in 6 months, we're probably on different pages right now. I think that's so important for people to recognize once they start hitting some of those critical thresholds. You're growing real enterprise value, but along that, are you supporting the enhancement of that enterprise value in addition to the supporting of the revenue?
What we usually find is when you start cleaning up a business, just like you did, the business owners no longer want to exit. So I'm assuming your guys are still happy that they're there these days.
So they're happy, right? We've created an ecosystem where one of the things we did 18 months ago is they raised their hand and said, look, we don't even understand our business anymore. We understand at a high level. We make a product, we sell it, but the systems, the processes, the controls, the accountability, it's just really far outside of our wheelhouse. So we graduated them to, board members without any sort of daily responsibility, even monthly responsibility. They get paid very, very well. They still get their dividends compensatory towards, their equity in the company. They make multiple 7 figures without having any involvement, selective involvement, right? I'll say no responsibility, as much involvement as they want. One of them likes to travel the globe, meet great people, bring back relationships, doesn't have an office in the office anymore, and is really living a great life. The other one is somewhere in between, but you're spot on. As we start to be courted by some people to potentially exit, one of the partners saying, whoa, hold on here, right? Why do I want to sell? I don't want out of this. I've got a nice annuity built in here. It's clipping right along. There's plenty of cash in the bank. There's no debt on the balance sheet. Why do I want out? And admittedly, as I'm sharing with him, it's tough for me to come up with a reason for you specifically why you want out, right? Like on my side, I know I want out, right? I want to go conquer some new mountains and do some new things. But from your side, you're right. Good income, stable situation, good brand name. So you're spot on. You get to that point where I said, hop in a time machine, go back in time. I would have come up with $3 million. I would have figured it out. It might have been a different position.
And I get it. Is there anything we should have talked about today that we didn't get a chance to?
I don't think so. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I could go on, I feel like, for hours with you of just talking business philosophy. And to me, it's a conversation around success swing singles, right? That you get to a point in a business and it's the small hinges that swing the big doors, right? It's a series of those incremental 1%, 2%, 3% changes, right? That Kaizen manufacturing philosophy. Finance is such a pivotal part of that. Documenting your processes and revisiting them are such a critical part of that. Getting outside information from people that are further down the road than you is such a critical part of that. That to me, I'll use a Tony Robbins statement, right? If you're not as successful as you want to be, it's probably not for a lack of resources. It's probably a lack of resourcefulness, because so much information, so many people, so many books, so many podcasts, like you should be as successful as you want to be.
Do you know what the closing line is after I do my outro for you?
I don't, but I'm excited for you to share it with me.
You don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. That's what it is. Because too many people throw money at the problem. And money will fix it, but then you're not going to have any. So go out and be more resourceful.
That's it.
If people would like to learn more about you, your coaching and your systems, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm a pretty simple guy. It's just RyanNiddel.com. That's RyanNiddel.com. Also, every social handle. It's all the same, Ryan Niddel. My thought process right now at this season of life is just to consistently share what I'm up to. I don't have a course. I don't have something to sell you. I think you add enough value to the world and eventually good stuff comes back. So I'm just documenting my journey as I keep growing this company and sharing what works and admittedly sharing what doesn't work, which I think is just as important.
It very much is. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
What do you need to improve in your business based on today's episode? Are you making sure that you're billing in a timely fashion, collecting the revenue billed, having the right incentives for your people, helping your people understand how your business works? Too often they just see all this money coming in and they think you keep it all, which we all know is not the truth, right? They need to understand how their decisions affect your bottom line. Do you have good inventory management in? Are you working it properly? Do you understand your financials and what drives them? As you heard, most business owners don't. It's just the reality of it. You do what you love. Do you have that childlike curiosity that will help you understand and grow your business and break you through that glass ceiling? What are the parts of the company that you love being focused on? What are the parts that you need someone else to focus on? The main areas are finance, operations, sales, and HR. Each have their own specialties and their needs. You can't ignore them because they will cause trouble across the other areas. Brian took the company he was chatting at from 5 million to 70 million just a few years. That is what happens when you put great people on your team. So the question is, who do you need to add? And how can we support you to help you grow and do some of these incredible things? Now, I have to repeat this. You don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. And remember to focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done for you service, you can hire us as your chief profitability officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.